Okay. Uh, so, hello there for anybody watching. We're live and sadly not recording because I don't know if I have to do that after the fact or what. Um, anyway, welcome to the show. We're only starting right on time. Holy mackerel. And please excuse my loud-mouthed cat. Um, she's absolutely, completely disrespectful of other people's personal space. Like, no lie, that cat has no respect. Okay. So today's show is going to be about the labor shortage, or as most of us have come to understand it, the wage shortage. And that's really absolutely what it is. But it's not just a wage shortage, and we're going to talk about a lot of the factors contributing to it. Cinder, have a heart. Go lay down. Oh, she's upset because it's lap time. Right. This is the time of night where she absolutely takes 100% control of my lap. Come on, Cinder. All right. Um, so there's we all know that there's a labor shortage, and we're beginning to actually really feel it. There are fewer products on the shelves, fewer variety in projects. You'll go into some stores and there'll be like an entire shelf where the product just isn't there anymore and it's an empty shelf. I've seen that. And um, across many sectors of the employment market, employers are having a very difficult time finding and keeping workers. Um, and in the mainstream media, I got to admit, generally they have not been terribly fair to millennials. This time around, I feel that the tone has softened a little bit. The initial impulse, I think, was to go ahead and just play the let's blame Gen X and millennials game. And then it became really apparent really, really quickly that that wasn't going to work because the pandemic forced some 3 million workers into early retirement. Um, so we've got a lot of people in the country right now in highly qualified positions. You need a degree and you need years of experience in the field. And a lot of those folks are getting older and they are retiring. That was happening pre-pandemic, and in fact, some of you may have noticed the empty shelves phenomenon was also happening pre-pandemic, um, and that is, because there has been this gap all along between what older and more experienced workers in the workforce have been experiencing and have gotten in terms of um, pay raises and qualified positions, and their access to education was much better than ours is. And then you've got the millennial crowd, and many of them now actually do have those years of experience and they have the education, but the workforce has largely treated them like they've been entry level all along. They got their entry level jobs when they were 18, 19, 20, and way too many of them, I have not looked at the statistics, so I don't want to say most. Okay. But we all know way too many of them never got to a place of forward progression in their careers. They just kind of moved bilaterally and then started picking up gig work. I want to do an entire show at some point on whether or not gig work is good for the economy or bad for the economy. But gig work is another one of those things now that's playing really heavily into this labor shortage. Um, I think it's important for employers at this point to recognize that 40 plus years of telling workers that we amounted to a warm butt in a chair, or, oh, you can be replaced. There's a line of applicants waiting for your job. Um, and treating employees with a sort of, well, blatant neglect at best and downright disrespect has made employees not. I mean, why bother? We became adults, and I am very lucky. By the way, I am employed at a job. This is not my job yet, but I am very lucky. I work for an employer who treats the employees like adults, and even though the pay is not great, I will probably stay there until this starts paying me very regularly or something spectacular shows up, simply because my employer treats all of the employees. I'm not just talking, oh, they treat me with respect, there's these other people. No, 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 no. My employer treats us like adults. And that is priceless, apparently, because if you work in fast food, in fact, if you work in a lot of jobs, the attitude from the get-go, from the interview forward, is you are like a kindergartner or a first grader, and you need to be managed and you need to be controlled and you need to be told what to do. And like children, apparently, in a lot of places I've worked, managers don't think that they have to talk to the employees with respect. And there is the, like, employees this whole time, they've known too. If we try to unionize, we will be fired. If we try to speak out against a toxic manager, they will find a way. They will fire us. And so employees for the last 30, 40 years have really just been swallowing it and swallowing it and swallowing it. Anybody who couldn't make it far enough ahead, um, uh, then got even further sort of chastised. Oh, you didn't work hard enough. You didn't get an education. You know, um, you didn't behave good enough. And so you don't deserve the respect of being treated and talked to like an adult. Jobs got shipped overseas. And this is one of those things where the government did very little to stop private employers. I mean, they have this thing. We don't stop private employers from running their businesses the way they want to. Um, you can love that or you can hate that, but that is the reality. Um, Employers shipped so many jobs to other countries, um, Indonesia, Mexico, um, anywhere it was cheaper, really. Anywhere where the labor laws let them get away with practices that they weren't going to be able to get away with here in the United States or in Europe. Um, and and then the workers here who were left out in the cold were told, oh, well, maybe you should have picked a different career. Maybe you should have gotten a better education. Maybe you should have seen it coming. Like we're all psychic. Um, and I personally think that this is as much of a factor as the wage depression. But the wage depression is what people can grasp onto. And that's because it's cold, hard numbers, and the numbers are horrible, like really horrible. If wages had kept up with inflation since 1968, and I read this in an article that was dated January of 2020, so it's now a year old. It was like January 21st or something like that, 2020. So it's about a year old. And if wages had kept up with inflation as they had prior to 1968, minimum wage workers would be making $24 an hour today. Wages got depressed. And here's the thing, it wasn't because American workers weren't doing the thing. In fact, American workers, of course, absolutely were doing the thing. Production has gone up and up and up and up. Some of that is totally due to automation. We can produce a lot more now because we have machines in some sectors that do the work for us 24/7. They do it fast. That's great. But also because as wages went down, it seems to me the average American worker just kind of assumed to themselves, oh, I'm not working hard enough. And we put in more hours. We got side gigs. American workers spent the last 40 years doing the hustle and grind like nobody's business. Yeah, absolutely, Fred. That's a great comment. We spend far too much time worrying about who deserves what. It would be easier if we decided everyone deserves a decent life. Yeah, and then that comes down to it. Employers seem to think that employees should give up a sizable portion of their lives, 40 hours a week. And I'm terrible at math, but that's 40 hours plus 52 weeks, more or less. That's generally what you're expected to be available for. Huge amount of our lives. For the vast majority of our best years of living. And they don't think that the people who are doing their labor necessarily deserve to be making enough money to eat a comfortable dinner. And I named this first episode Bread and Roses for a reason. I actually want to go over a little bit about this because, like I said, this is not just about wages, but when you talk about depressed wages, I've got some statistics over here, and I took my glasses off because the glare on the camera from my screen is just horrendous, which I noticed in my very first test, and I don't have a good way to combat that just yet. I'm sure somebody will suggest something wonderful and innovative, and I'll be like, oh, why didn't I think of that? But for now, I'll just be leaving my glasses off for most of the show, unless I have to read something. So, I guess I didn't take a note on that. I was sure I had. So Bread and Roses, yeah. I remember where I put it. This is fun. Okay. So back in 1910, this is really cool. In case you don't already know this story, this is a cool story, and the inspiration for the name of this episode. Back in 1910, a woman named Helen Todd was going around the country during women's suffrage movement, and also for the textile strikes, which those were the textile industry was largely run by women who were being underpaid and taxed, but didn't have the right to vote. So she's going around the country and she's making the argument taxation without representation. And she's also talking about wages. And this girl comes up to her and says that what she liked about the speeches, quote, was that about the woman voting so everybody would have bread and flowers too. And I'm guessing that struck a chord with Helen Todd because she went on to include it in a speech, and then also in the American magazine, September 19th, 1911, she wrote, "Woman is the mothering element in the world. And her vote will go forward. I'm sorry, will go toward helping forward the time when life's bread, which is home, shelter, and security, and the roses of life, music, education, nature, and books, shall be the heritage of every child that is born in the country, in the government of which she has a voice. So there was a picket sign in 1910 at the Chicago Garment Workers Strike. In fall 1910, it said, "We want bread and roses too." In summer of 1911, California Proposition 4, this was the women's right to vote proposition in California. The suffrage banners read "Bread for all" and "Roses too." And there we get the phrase "bread and roses." It was also made into a really cool poem by James Oppenheim. And if you've not read that poem, go ahead and just Google that, "Bread and Roses" by James Oppenheim. It's a good poem. So I liked it because when we're talking about wages today, a lot of people are talking about living wages and thriving wages. And first of all, the minimum wage was always the poverty line in this country, but it's now total destitution. Nobody can live on it. If there are businesses still out there paying the minimum wage and complaining about not having workers, they should just know that literally nobody can work there. The poorest of the poor cannot afford to work at a place that is going to pay them what is it right now? 725, 750? It's not even at $8 an hour. The fight for 15 began more than 10 years ago. And we're still fighting for 15. We should be fighting for 23, 24, because that's what it would be had wages kept up with productivity or inflation. We'd be making, and that would come with benefits, by the way. I've read those numbers before. It would be like $20, $21 an hour with full benefits. We're talking medical, all the perks, right? But that isn't what happened. And then employers began treating their lowest paid employees badly, just generally disrespectfully. They made certain that millions of people knew they could and would be replaced at any time. Companies were not required to be loyal to the workers at all, ever, at all. And now that the pandemic forced those workers out of the workplace, nobody should be surprised that they're not eager to return to employers who have treated them like cattle for decades. And we've been talking about it for decades. It was an issue before the pandemic. So if we want to solve this problem, we need to get into the psychology of the employees instead of why don't the employees want to work? That is horrible framing. First, it assumes that those employees are not working at all simply because they are not employed. The stimulus checks undeniably did a lot to help the economy. But they didn't pay people's bills for as long as the businesses were shut down by a long shot. Like every time people were like, "Oh, we have to cut off the benefits because, no, those benefits, the vast excesses that they were talking about, those only applied if you were making minimum wage. You had slightly more in savings, you had slightly more income if you had already been making minimum wage. Like for me, it was only a couple of $100 more than if I'd been working. It didn't raise my quality of life. I didn't magically have a savings account with several $1,000s coming off the poverty line. That didn't happen to anybody. But it did give people a little bit of room to stay in their homes, also because it was coupled with that eviction moratorium, which actually only applied to some people. Just so you know, lots and lots and lots of people got evicted during the pandemic because in the first place, the moratorium didn't apply to every kind of renter. But, it helped keep people in their places for a little while. They immediately still had to go out and get other kinds of income. A lot of people became day traders. Uh, like that was big news. It's kind of funny to me that now the news is asking the question like it's this huge mystery, when in fact they knew the answer a year ago. A lot of people were forced to make up that income by becoming independent contractors, going and working for Amazon or something like that as an independent contractor, finding alternative means of income. And we're Americans, we're innovative. We are technologically savvy on the whole. And we know exactly what we're doing. Hold on just a second. I'm going to kill my cat. Not really. Apologize for that. She's just over there licking and chewing in my ear and it's driving me nuts. Anyway, but yeah, so now the workers are like, well, gee, I made more money on my game stonks than I ever did working at Burger King. Why would I go back to Burger King? In fact, not only that, but why would I go to Sherry's? Why would I continue working in an industry where my boss disrespects me, my coworkers disrespect me, the customers disrespect me? I spend all day, every day on my feet running around, and I maybe make enough to pay my rent and go out to the movies with my friends every now and again. I can squeeze it in. So, thank you, Fred. $7.25 is the minimum wage. Jiminy Christmas. I mean, that is so low. When I was in my 20s, it was $5.25. It's gone up $2 in 20 years. That's insane, actually. So, let's see. So we have 3 million people who retired. Some of them were already going to retire, but I believe it was the Washington Post or Business Insider. Ooh, remind me, I'm going to have to get really good about knowing where I'm getting my quotes from before I go on air in the future. But 3 million people who were nearing retirement, but not there yet, right? Retired a little bit early. A few of them may come back, but probably not. Probably not. Those people are probably out of the workforce forever. Another issue that we are having is something that Andrew Yang touched on during his campaign, 2019, which is that it's not so much that we don't have enough butts and seats, bodies to fill the positions. We do. We don't have enough qualified people in the fields that require positions. And again, this is for a bunch of reasons, mostly that the educational opportunities of the incoming workforce just in some cases weren't there. In other cases, those people are now mired in debt, stuck in jobs they can't leave, not even aware that their perfect job is probably actually looking for them, because we have no good system of helping people find meaningful employment. They're on their own. Oh, go fill out a bunch of job applications. And I don't know if you guys have had to fill out online job applications recently. It's I find it a nightmare. There's a bunch of sites that immediately began hawking, frankly, nonsense at you, stuff that's got nothing to do with what you were looking for. Um, your name winds up automatically on lists, and it's all like, oh, here, join this careers site, and we'll shovel 200 job suggestions to you on your text messages on your phone. Pain in the ass covers it. Yeah, pain in the ass covers it. I mean, I find searching for a job right now to be just one of the most disheartening experiences ever. There are probably people who would be happy to hire me for my organizational skills or my ability to articulate. Um, but they'll never find me and I'll never find them, because we don't have a clear system that easily connects employers to the right employees. And the employers, by the way, I also read this in an article this week, and I, I think it's funny to watch the mainstream media news and to read mainstream articles. I get to sit there and be like, how did you frame it that way? Like, this is such blatant BS. But one of the things that they were saying was that employers needed to, uh, you know, actually raise wages as opposed to what they are doing, which is um, advertising for better wages, and then when you get there, maybe not so much. And I completely forgot where I was going with that point. That's one thing that's going to suck about being live. I don't rehearse. Well, I didn't rehearse this week. I don't have time to rehearse. I do work 40 hours a week, and it was all I could do to get my camera doing what it was supposed to do this weekend. So that's going to be super fun. But yeah, we're not going to be able to, and I got to check the time here. Cool. We're not going to be able actually to come anywhere near solving this problem until employers discover that they need those. Oh, that's right. That's what it was. Okay, found back to my point. The article basically concluded with um, everybody's in a standoff. Employees are waiting for employers to raise wages, and employers are waiting for their savings accounts to run out. And the whole problem with that is this notion, is this premise that people just don't want to work. It's nonsense. Those people are working. What they are not is employed. Entrepreneurship, way up. Investing, way up. People are making their income by other sources. They're just circumventing this impossible to navigate job seeking market, because why bother? If you haven't, whether you're looking for a job or not, if you just want to give yourself a headache for an afternoon, go ahead and go out there and pretend like you're looking for a job in your field, and see if you aren't in tears and feel like a failure as a human being in maybe 2.5 hours, because the system is that ridiculous. And I know there are people still out there getting jobs. This is good. Unemployment way down. Problem with unemployment being way down while we have millions of empty jobs is that, first of all, some of that is just people no longer qualifying for unemployment. They take the unemployment number from the people who filed for unemployment that week. But there's a whole lot of things that can get you disqualified from unemployment. So just because unemployment is super low right now does not mean that we don't have a lot of unemployed people. It's just those people have either run out of benefits, or for whatever reason, they're disqualified now from filing for employment. So we've got all this mismatch going on here, and still the narrative seems to be, why don't workers want to work? Well, actually, history shows us that in hard economic times, American workers work even harder. We didn't overnight just get lazy. And that entire narrative drives me crazy. I don't know that many lazy people. And just for some context there, I live in a city that has had the reputation. I don't know if it is currently true or not, because the pandemic has shuffled things all over the place. But the reputation of Eugene, Oregon, is that it has the highest number of homeless people per capita of pretty much any city in the US. I've heard that. I don't know if that's currently true. I have a lot of friends who are or have been homeless. I have been homeless. Um, rent rent is a nightmare. This city is one of the many West Coast cities well known for just nightmarish rent. I got a sweet deal through a friend, and I'm very, very, very lucky. If I had to go out there and try to find an apartment right now, I would be homeless again immediately, because rent is out of reach for people who work average jobs, and I work a job downtown. I'm not even entry level anymore. I I work a job in a city whose rent I can't afford. If I didn't have a friend renting me a place at a completely reasonable rate, um, I wouldn't be able to keep my job. And so we have all these homeless people out there. And if you think that they're, just lazy and on drugs and didn't want to get it together, okay. So some of them, some of them, uh, some of them got to their 20s and decided, screw growing up. I'm just going to party forever. And that's not going to get you very far in life if that's a choice you make. Um, but most of them that I have known or talked to had careers. Some of them have been business owners at one time or another. I was friends with a well-respected journalist who worked for the local newspaper here for a time. And circumstances in his life went sideways, and he wound up, even though he had at one time been a well-respected area journalist, he was homeless. And this isn't, by the time he's homeless, he's an older gentleman and stuff. He wasn't crazy. He wasn't in cognitive decline. He did not have a drug problem. Circumstances put him on the streets. And once you are there, some of you may be really, really familiar with this old song and dance, but once you're on the streets, in spite of all the programs to help, the truth is, for most people, and my city is getting a little bit better about this than most, but for the most part, every single help is actually just designed to keep you right there. They can't make money off of helping the homeless if all the homeless suddenly have homes. So there's an industry around helping the homeless that does everything except fix any of the root causes of their homelessness, i.e., lack of affordable housing that they can get into. Yeah, I thank you, George, for your comment. George Talbert there. Thank you so much for being here. The poem is too large to post in the chat, or I would have done it. It was very cool. Yeah, and thank you also, John Harvick, for your comment. They'll help keep you running in place and never get ahead, maybe. And that's true. They'll make sure you've got food, um, so you don't starve to death, because that's a bad look. It's a bad look when people start starving to death on the streets, and nobody wants that. But actually reach people, and so we'll go over the whole rent issue, of the whole rent economy, and a bunch of things that are wrong with that. If you guys watch TYT, you're already familiar with a bunch of things that are wrong with that. And by the way, if you do not watch TYT, if you are not subscribed to TYT, um, you you should. um, I can't tell you who I love the best, because I love them all. I'm always like, oh, I love John Adiarola. Oh, I love Francesca. Oh, look, it's Dr. Richie. In fact, I've got a roommate who will hear Dr. Richie's voice from across the house and be like, ooh, ooh, is this I Wish a Karen would? So if you've not subscribed to TYT, please subscribe to TYT. I'm going to get a lot of my subject material from them. I get a lot of my content from them. They are a great source of all of this. Yeah, and another comment by John about the homeless issue. Go here for food, go here for medical attention. He's talking about going different places here. Go here for food, go here for medical attention, go here to get help with the housing. Then you can go sleep way over there, and that's it. And be out of sight. And don't sit on that bench for too long. Don't stand over there too long. Once we have people in a certain economic class, we seem to decide, and there's no good reason for this. There's not a shred of actual rationale, but we do assume that it is their fault that they are in that economic class, that if they had worked right or hard, tried, whatever, if they were better people somehow, then they wouldn't be in that mess. And so automatically we wind up talking down to them. We label them, and we stigmatize them, and we categorize them. And the ironic thing is, if you're a homeless person and you're trying to get a job, it's going to be really hard to get a job. I've done this. I've gotten a job while homeless. I did it by hiding the fact that I was homeless. I literally picked a house on a street, a random house. I kid you not. When filling out job applications while I was homeless, I picked a random house that nobody was living in, and I put that address as my address on several applications. Not the place I'm working now, but on several applications. And I eventually got a job by basically just pretending maybe I wasn't homeless. Because if they know, if you can't hide that and they find out, there's this judgment. Oh, you must have done something to get there. That's not a safe hire. That's not the kind of person who will be productive. So then you've got a really, really hard time finding a job. While people are screaming out the window at you, get a job. And you're like, I don't know what you think I spend 12 hours of my day doing. And I'm not saying this is true about all homeless people, but it is true about a lot of them. A lot of them are out there legitimately trying. They go for a job. They're told, wait 2 weeks. They wait. No job. I actually was given a job offer when I was homeless all the way up to Vancouver, Washington. And so I got myself to Vancouver, Washington. And it turned out that the job offer was completely bogus. It was a guy, and I don't do that kind of work. Not that there's anything wrong with that kind of work. Sex work is work. But it was false advertising. That's not the job I showed up for. So I thought I was going to be working in an auto mechanics place as like the front store counter girl, and that was not it at all. So I actually had applied to other places here in Eugene, and I get a call one day, and they're like, oh yeah, we'd like you to come in from an interview. I couldn't get down here to save my life. I didn't have a working vehicle. I had no money. So I walked from Vancouver, Washington to Eugene, Oregon. I did manage to hitch a tiny bit of the way, but I walked a majority of the distance. And then and I'm only gonna say this because the person who did this has not worked for the company in years. And but I get to this place, and I'm sitting in the seat and I'm waiting for my interview. And I was between 5 and 10 minutes late. I can't remember now if I was 5 minutes late or 10 minutes late. I was late for the interview. Straight up, dude walks out, and he's got no way of knowing what I just did. He does not know that I literally walked from Vancouver, Washington to try to make this interview. And he says, if you can't be bothered to show up on time at this job, then you can just walk out right now. I haven't even gone into the interview yet. And this is the type of attitude that employers have been handing out like candy. So of course nobody wants to work for them. Nobody wants to work for those jerks because they're jerks. And corporate policy takes the place of common sense all the time. I worked in a fitting room in a well-known department store, and I'm a left-handed person, which also translates to left-handed thinker. And my job was the fitting room, so I had to do things all a very specific way, and I needed tags for the hangers, and I had to check all the clothes and so on and so forth. And none of the other girls at this place wanted to work in the department store or in the fitting room at all. It was considered by far the most boring, horrible position in the store to work in, and largely because you just stood there. Like, you just stood there all day long, and if the store was empty, you stood there and you did nothing. But I liked it because I don't mind standing around and doing nothing. I have a super active imagination, so I can just get lost in thoughts all day, and I don't mind. If you want to pay me to just stand there in a uniform and twiddle my thumbs, I'll let you pay me for that. But over the course of the couple of months, I actually rearranged the system in the fitting room to make a much more logical, streamlined sense. You didn't have to move racks from one place and then back again, stuff like that. And I just, worked out a nice little system. It was logical. It was good. I had an area manager come through and inspect the store. Now, mind you, my store manager had barely noticed and certainly had not said anything, but the area manager comes through. And apparently my store manager gets this huge talking to because I have rearranged the most holy and sacred corporate way that the fitting room front area must be arranged. That kind of ridiculousness, that complete stifling of innovation. Oh, we want creative, innovative employees. No, you don't. You don't want to hear a single freaking suggestion ever. You don't. And so I think it is really more the attitude problem of employers. I mean, wages are definitely one thing. You pay me $28, I will stand on one foot and cluck like a chicken for you all day long. If I get to go home after 6 to 8 hours of that and live my life, have time for my obnoxious attention craving cat, have time to write the novel I've been meaning to write for years, but employers don't want to do that. They want us available for huge amounts of our time. And they want us to be available and still pay us at a wage that they know will keep people barely paying their rent, always stressed about the bills. And whenever prior to the pandemic, workers had brought this up before, it's like, oh, better budgeting. The super famous McDonald's budget that showed, I think it was like a ridiculous $400 for rent. Where's that? And even on its own budget, you wound up over budget and had to get on food stamps. So the people on food stamps are not the issue. The employers who are paying people so little that they are working 30 to 40 hours a week and still have to get on government assistance. That is the problem. Those are the welfare queens. If you're a progressive and you're a liberal, I haven't said one single thing tonight except maybe the very cool story about how I named this episode that you do not already know. But I think that it's important for us to recognize when the mainstream media says, oh, workers don't want to work. Not a shred of evidence to support that. They are working. They're working for their families. They are working on themselves. They are discovering, they're exploring, they are investing. They're investing. We do know that the ceiling for savings at the lower middle income level actually did go up. People actually who'd had their savings dip way low actually got a little bit of boost. And the floor on savings did come up a little bit. That's nothing but good. So it's not that workers don't want to work. It's that workers do not want to work for peanuts while being treated like they are unimportant and replaceable. You know who does not ever treat me like I'm replaceable? My cat. So we as human beings are so much more than our jobs. People go, so what do you do? And we all know what we mean by that. Oh, so what do you do? Oh, I'm an engineer. Oh, I'm a fighter pilot. And wouldn't that be great? But no. um, uh, what do? I write poetry. I make long Facebook posts about things I'm only barely qualified to talk about. I play Elder Scrolls Online and several other wonderful video games. My recommends for video games this year, not that anybody's asking, Elder Scrolls Online, Final Fantasy 14, although they're kind of having some Fritzy sort of stuff going on Final Fantasy 14, so. Oh yeah, yeah, and another great notation by John Harbick here. Walmart holding a food drive for their employees during Thanksgiving while they throw away turkeys every year. Fast food restaurants bleaching the food that they threw away to keep homeless people from eating it. And they always give the most horrendous excuse for this. Well, that food got thrown away, and so it's no longer safe to eat, and we don't want them to get sick. So you're going to pour poison on it and just hope that the person digging in your back dumpster isn't so poor and crazy that they don't care or they don't know? Or you could just let people eat and not have to make your pennies off of everything. We produce so much. We've got waste just going everywhere, going into the ocean. We have an island's worth of trash in the ocean. We produce so much waste, but give people things away for free. Oh, no, we can't do that. And so, yes, are the American workers basically now in rebellion about this? Yeah. But people are still working. They really are. They've got their Instacart and their DoorDash and the gig work that they picked up on Etsy. They're making things. A lot of women in particular. This is a neat force. They keep talking about, well, women don't have childcare, so they're not rejoining the workforce. That's a big part of the problem. Okay, but not being employed doesn't mean that they're just not doing anything. Those same employers force those women to find alternative methods to take care of themselves and their children. And then they liked those methods better. Maybe because they didn't have customers and bosses breathing down their necks 24/7. It's hard to see because quarantine made stress go up. People's stress levels in 2019, 20 or 2020, 2021 are just sky high due to quarantine. Um, but if it had not been for the pandemic effect, um, work related stress probably has gone way down, particularly for remote workers. Once this camera's off, I can kick back and I actually don't do anything particularly wild or inappropriate, but I could, as soon as the camera is off. And so for remote workers, there's that they can be done with their day, or they can even be working, if they don't have a camera or anything like that. They can be sitting here at home, drinking a beer, smoking a blunt, and doing their job, and nobody's going to say boo about it. Why would they give that up to go back into an office that is too hot, too cold, surrounded by people they barely like, barely know, um, so that the office Karen can pick on them and the office can show off the new Rolex he absolutely did not earn through hard work. Why? Why would they do that? And so they're not doing that. And I think they're not going to do that. I think right now, American workers have more leverage than they've had in 40, 50, 60 years. I don't know when the last time exactly was that we had this level of leverage. But I will say this: labor movements follow pandemics like peanut butter and on a jelly sandwich. I mean, it is just a thing. I looked into this going all the way back to the Black Plague, when employers get rid of their employees and they're like, "Oh, you're on your own. We're all gonna die." It turns out that employees don't go, "Gee, I want to put those shackles on again right away," just because the sickness has passed. And in this case, it's kind of really ironic that the news is even asking this question when the best course of action, maybe not for the economy, maybe not for the politicians, maybe not for the almighty dollar, but for your health, wellness, and safety, the best idea is still to stay home as much as you can. I'm not saying forego every outing. I'm not saying don't go anywhere, but wear the damn mask. We are in the middle of a global pandemic. This is one of those moments where, like when I grew up, and I'm lucky because I'm a 90s kid, and I grew up in kind of I think a special time. It was a prosperous time. Things were relatively peaceful if you were a white girl. Just putting that out there. Things were a whole lot less peaceful for other people, but I got the privilege of being a white girl in a nice white sort of neighborhood town, and so things were prosperous and everything seemed, at least as a child to me, hunky dory. And now we've got, I forgot where I was going with that, but no, I completely lost it. Holy mackerel. It's getting on towards my bedtime. I get up for work between 4 and 4:30, so it's getting on towards my bedtime. But the employees do have more leverage now, like they always do after a pandemic. And I think that American employees in particular, it's sort of our responsibility as citizens now to say, okay, this is our country and we run it. We do. We do. You run it with your dollars, which is a vote. You run it with your votes. You run it by what you are and are not willing to tolerate. Okay, so this summer 2020, we decided we were unwilling to continue to tolerate uh, brutal police murders on our streets. And we're still unwilling to tolerate that. We're not currently marching about it, but the American worker made it pretty clear. Tired of this. Tired of tolerating this. And we are tired of tolerating employers treating adults with bills to pay like children and paying them at subsistence wages and then disrespecting them because, apparently we have this habit of disrespecting people who make very little. That phrase, dignity of work, is so ironic. It's so ironic because when you're people should afford. There's a whole sector. There are a bunch of sectors of jobs that we don't consider have any dignity at all. Fast food, no dignity. Janitors, no dignity. Plumbers. Well, we respect them and we respect plumbers in terms of their technical skill. Do we afford them a huge amount of dignity? No, we don't. If you work at a call center, if you're a customer service agent, or heaven help you, a person who works telesurveys or telemarketing, if you have a phone job, you know what I'm talking about here. Maybe even more than the fast food workers. At least the fast food workers are feeding people. There's food at the end of that experience. So, a lot of people behave. If you're a telemarketer or a telesurveyor, there are a whole lot of people on this planet who just think that that is not a job, and it is absolutely there. No dignity is attached to that work, none. So if we say, oh, there's dignity in work, everybody should have a job because there's dignity in having a job, then we need to stop saying to the McDonald's employee, well, if you wanted a better job, no, they have a job. There's dignity in that, and they're feeding you. So maybe watch your tone. So there's going to be a lot more to talk about on the labor subject, for sure, for certain. Also, this is not going to ultimately be the entire format of the show, just me talking about one subject ad infinitum with no particular direction. That happened because I wasn't kidding when I told y'all I'm not remotely qualified or in the least bit prepared to do what I'm doing. I'm not. If anybody ever says, oh my God, that Liz Sissio, did she just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be a journalist now? Well, the answer is yes. You don't get to throw that against me or in my face because that's literally what I did. I woke up during Black Lives Matter and said, I have a voice. I have something to say. I feel like it deserves to be a part of the conversation. I feel like my perspective will, at some point, maybe not about this issue where I rambled on for an hour about nothing, but I've got something to say. So I'm just going to do this now, and then I did. So no, I'm not qualified. You'll notice in the description on the channel, I'm not an expert in anything. I hold no degrees. I just no. But we are going to work ourselves into a format. I've got some notes on that. Just some upcoming previews, stuff we're likely to talk about. Maybe a lot. Lots of cool advancement in tech news. Although I think this last 6 weeks or so taught me a lesson about reporting on tech news, which is to wait until the counter guys come out with their statement, because the tardigrade quantum entanglement thing, very much like the warp bubble thing, turned out to be more clever media phrasing than logistical reality. So I want to make sure I'm not doing that too much of that. And like, going, oh wow, this is so cool, and oh whoa, no, I guess I totally misunderstood the science and I just ran with a headline. But we'll be doing lots of tech news, lots of science news. um I want to do a lot of positive news on the show, uh because it doesn't get a lot of space. And sorry for the late Sunday airing here, but we will be Saturdays at that's going to be 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 10 p.m. Central Standard Time, and 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It has been an hour, and so for tonight, we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank you guys all so much for sticking with me, joining me here. We're going to talk about lots of stuff. There are open positions, volunteer positions. I'm not getting paid. I can't pay you. We're doing this for funsies. But positions for co-hosts, and I could really use some tech people. Hey, you guys like my lovely set here? My bedroom, that's my set. Super professional, right? So hopefully this is just the beginning and we will grow and expand. I have no idea what we're talking about next week. No idea. But tune in Saturday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for another cap of the week's news and commentary. And thank you so much for being here. This is Liz Sissio. Live long and prosper. Oh, I have no idea how to sign off. Fun. Okay. Like, okay, so my webcam's like in the, there we go. Found the button. All right. Anyway, live long and prosper.